If you've been following this channel, you know that I really love very textured pots. I also like tall pots, but the combination of tall and textured is really difficult. A few months ago, I tried it with sectional throwing and doing textured, but it sort of fell apart and broke down a little bit, and in my mind, it was a failure. But my daughter loves the pot, so she got that one. But today, I'm going to try in a different way and hopefully succeed a little bit more. If you want to make textures, there's many ways, of course, you can do it. You can throw the pot and you can cut out the textures afterwards. I've done that with a few of my tall sectional thrown pots. That's nice, but I also like to do another kind of texture where I basically just throw the cylinder and I do some textures and then I expand the pot and the textures become more dramatic. I like that style. But as I mentioned in the beginning, I like to do these crazy textures, but I also like to do tall vases. And the combination is not easy. It is, of course, because of my limited skills with throwing. Some people would just throw a lot of clay on the wheel and throw a really tall cylinder and do the textures and then expand it. I can't, no matter what, no matter how much clay I put on the wheel, I can't get it as high as I would like. So therefore, I often employ sectional throwing. So you put one section, make one section, do another section, put it on top, and that way you can make it as tall as you want, even with the limited skills that I have. But the problem is when you do textures, you sort of weaken the clay. And last time when I did a sectional pot, added some textures and started to expand it, it kind of broke loose in the connections. So today I'm going to try something else. I'm going to start out again with a cylinder and I'm going to add some textures, but I'm going to make the textures go all the way up to the top. Then I'm going to make expand it. And then in the end, I'm going to put the top on. That's not going to be textured. It wasn't in the other version I did either, but I'm going to separate those two things. So let's go ahead and do the first section, the textured first section. And I have some reclaimed clay here that I'm going to use. I think it's about 5 kilo, but that should make it okay. It's probably not going to be very big, but at least I will see if my concept works. Now we have the clay ball centered, and it's time to open up and pull it into the tallest possible cylinder I can make. I still want to keep a relatively thick wall because I am going to add some textures. So now we have a decent sized cylinder. It's not super tall, as I said. I have my limitations. I could probably make it a little bit taller if I was making the walls thinner, but for the textured pot, I don't want to go too thin. Then I'm gonna go through it. And also, this is just a test. And have to remember that I'm gonna put another top on it. So this is not the full height of this pot, but it's the beginning. Next, I want to give it a layer of white slip. I'm using porcelain slip because I want to have a big contrast between the grooves and the heights in my texture. The slip that I'm using is made from porcelain. It's Audrey Blackman, a very fine English porcelain. But as you may notice, it looks very gray. And that's because, I think it's because it's been molding in the heat. It's no problem. When it dries and when it fires, it turns completely white. So it works, even though it looks a bit funny. So I'm just going to apply that throughout the pot. And I will take it from there. And you may notice that it is two different kinds of clay, porcelain and stoneware. And maybe you heard that it won't work together because porcelain does shrink a lot more than stoneware. I think this porcelain shrink about 20% totally, and the stoneware I'm using about 10%. So theoretically, that should not work. It should crackle and peel off. But I think maybe because it's such a thin layer that I'm adding, in my experience, it actually works really well. So in case someone tells you it's not possible, just do it anyway. Try it out. Maybe it works for you too. I can't promise you it will, but at least I found that for me, it does. I think that's good enough. And now before I start making my textures, I'm gonna scratch some textures. I just wanna heat it a little bit because otherwise I'm just gonna smudge out the porcelain. I'm not gonna show you all my heating. Probably gonna heat it for, I don't know, a few minutes, 5 minutes, something. And then I'm gonna come back to you. In this case, I'm gonna do scratch textures. And you can do all kinds of tools. I love to pick up my tools in shops that don't sell pottery because generally it's a lot cheaper. But recently I got some custom things made in Canada in 3D printing, and I got this one too. I never used it before, but it's sort of nice. But you can also just use a fork or any other tool you can find in the builder's market or in a kitchen store. They're usually very good. Now when you scratch it, do it in one go, but support it on the inside because otherwise you will bend it out of shape. So I'm going to start from the bottom. I can always trim that away later. So something like this. So it actually looks nice already, but I hope it will be even better when we start to expand it. So, and now, when you expand something like this from the inside, of course, you can't touch the outside. So that's the tricky part. So you can still hold on to the top a little bit. I usually use a sponge on the inside, and I go very slow with the expansion because it is a little more unstable when you do this, but It usually works. And don't push it too much at a time. Just go slowly. And you can see already now the texture is expanding and will become more dramatic. So I like that. Now when you do this, the top may start to wobble a little bit. That's okay. We can always cut it, and we probably need that to be able to add the next section. But that's fine, that's no problem. And just as always, be sure that you apply the pressure and you release the pressure slowly. If you do it too rapidly, you're gonna push it out of shape. So now you see it's beginning to get shape. I do want to expand a little bit more, but now you can see how the cracks are opening up. The tricky part here is if you do it too much, it will break through. So that's why I like to start out with a bit of thicker walls for something like this. It's always a question when you do this, as always, when to stop. I think I need to expand it just a little bit more on the upper part here. Get a little more shoulder. And it's always difficult when you work very close to a pot. One good trick is, I mean, as default, it would be logical to look here. But you shouldn't do that. You should look at the horizon of the pot, because that's where you see the shape of it. Yeah, I think we're getting there. I also have to think about the next top, or the top of it, and how that's gonna shape. And I think this, and then it goes up here, and maybe a small neck or something will be good. So I think a little bit on the shoulder here. It's also can be very tricky to actually get a feel for the shape when you have all this texture, because it kind of distorts the whole visual of it. But and sometimes just move away, maybe walk away from your wheel, to get that feel of how it looks. Yeah, I think I'm gonna leave it like that. It's not entirely as I expected, but again, it is a test. I was just gonna see if adding a section on top of a textured pot will actually look okay. But now as you see, the top here is not completely even, and to be able to attach the next section, it has to be. So I'm just gonna cut it with my potter's needle here. You have to keep your hands very steady when you do this. So now we have a good even surface to attach the next section on. It have to be even and have to be circular, otherwise it's very difficult. So I think this looks good. So now I'm just going to leave this. I will dry it a little bit more because we need stability, because when you add the next section, this have to be strong enough to carry that section. Otherwise, it will just collapse. I've done that. So I want to dry it a little bit and also just let it firm up a little bit. Maybe half an hour or something more if you have the time. You could even leave it overnight. I don't have the patience for that. So I'm just gonna leave it maybe half an hour or something, and then I'll move to the other wheel. Because now, as you know, if you follow this channel, I got this funny little wheel from Vevor. And so instead of moving this, throwing a new piece, moving this back, I can now throw it on the other wheel. That's such a wonderful thing. So I'm just going to leave this here, dry a little bit, and then move to the other wheel. Before I move to the other wheel, I just want to measure the width of the first section so I can throw the second section to fit perfectly. Yeah, that's it. That's what I'm aiming for. I'm also going to add a small groove to the rim here. I talked about this before. When you add sections, you can either add them flat to flat like I do. Some people make a curve and then the opposite curve on the next section. I like to do a small groove and then I will make a pointy top on the other one, because that way I think it's easier to position it. But you can do it in many ways. Just gonna wet it up a little bit. And just gonna make sure that it's right in the middle. Something like this. And now, of course, because I moved it around, I better measure again. And this time I'm gonna measure the middle, because that's where my pointy part of the next section is gonna be. That looks good. So now it's time to do the other section. Even though this second wheel, a Vevor wheel, is much smaller and not as powerful as my Shimpo, I found that it's not just a beginner's wheel. It works really well for me to do sectional throwing, because then I don't have to move this, throw the next section, put it back and so on. I can just do the next section on this wheel. I did so far up to 5 kilo on the wheel, and that's typically enough for sections. In this case, I'm just going to do, I think it's a couple kilos or something, because it's not such a tall section that I want to make. Oh. And this time I'm going all the way down to the bed, because of course we need a hole in the top. So it's gonna go the other way around. So all the way down to the bed, but I'm not gonna make it all, I'm not gonna expand that hole all the way out. I still want relatively thick walls, otherwise it won't stick. It will glide off and fall off when I turn it around. So now we have the cylinder, but we need to expand it a little bit. Not so much, but it should be easy enough. Let's see where we are. Yeah, this is just about right. Now we just need to make the top a little thinner, like a pointer, so it fits into the groove that I made. something like that. I'm just gonna check again. Yeah, a little bit wider. Now I dropped it. It's probably out of size now. So, yeah. Now it's totally out of size, so I'm just gonna go back and measure this. Yeah. Yeah. That's perfect. Ah, dropped it again. Doesn't matter. I'm done. So now I just have to firm up this piece as well, because even though it's the first section that will carry all the weight, this can also collapse if I turn it around. So I need to dry this. And again, I'm not going to show you how I dry. It's just a blow dryer. I'm going to dry it for a few minutes, and then I'm ready to turn it around and add it to my first section. Before you add a new section to a pot, you need to make sure that it's firm enough. It is of course a matter of experience, but if you sort of wriggle it a little bit, there should be a little bit of flexibility, but not too much, because it needs to be able to carry the weight, but it also needs to be soft enough to glue the next section. But before we add the section, I just want to add a little bit of slip or water. I may have some slip here. Yeah, just a little bit of this mud. I'm going to add that here to the groove. Like that. I'm also going to scratch it a little bit. You can use anything you want for scratching. I just use a scratching tool. Just want to make sure that the clay have the best conditions possible to attach. You also want to do sort of the same thing on the next section. I should have done that, of course, before I moved it. So now I'm just going to give it a little bit of wet here. I think that's going to be enough with all the slip we put here. So now it's time to turn it around. And as always, don't turn it slowly, because if you do that, it will bend. I usually throw it up in the air, more or less, and turn it around in one go, and then see if it fits. Here we go, like that. And this looks like it fits well. So you can just slowly turn it around to see. Yeah, it's not too wobbly. I always like to just knock it a little bit to be sure that it's really, really fitting well into the groove. That feels good. And now you can either try and attach them with the top on or without. I usually cut off the top right away. Just support with your body so you don't bend the whole pot. But this is a lot of torque up there. That's it. And now I usually add some water up here, because of course it's sort of dry here, not super dry, but I don't want to add any friction when I support this with my hands. So now I'm just going to very lightly just scratch this together. The tricky part here is always to make sure that in the end it feels like it's just one piece. Some people like to take a fork or something. You can do that and scratch the two pieces together. I don't usually do that. I just want to do it to demonstrate. But in any case, it has to be like molded into one piece. So now I'm ready to open up the top a little bit more, because I need to get my hands on the inside So I just need to squeeze this a little bit without adding too much pressure, because at this point it's still not fully attached down here. So like that, I think I can get, nope, can't get my hands in yet. So I still need to, just gonna squeeze my fingers together and make this a little bit wider. Yeah. So now I support with my hands on the inside, and slowly I use my rib to push it together, and I'm also pushing it together on the inside to make sure that it ends up feeling like one piece. And you can see already now that it almost looks like it's just one piece of clay. And that's what we're aiming for. Now sometimes, and I think I explained this before, sometimes you end up with too much clay where they connect and it bubbles out on the inside or the outside. I recommend that you cut it away. You can either push it to the outside and trim it away, push it to the inside and do it there. With a slim pot like this, it's not easy to do it on the inside, so it's better to do it on the outside. Sometimes it's the opposite problem. Sometimes you end up with too little clay there, and it kind of gets too weak. In that case, you can just roll a coal of clay and attach it all the way around. I usually end up with too much, so I need to trim it away. In this case, though, it seems that I got it just about right. So now I'm just trying to even out the walls. So I also like the connection from the textured to the non-textured to be sort of sharp for this design. And I want to do that now, because then I can finish this part, and I can dry it up a little bit, and because that's going to make the whole connection stronger. So something like that. I think I need to firm it up a little bit, so I will give it some heat, because I felt it was getting a little bit weak. So it's going to heat it up a little bit. Now when you do the top, of course you want to wet this a little bit, so it's lubricated, so you don't accidentally push it out of shape. But you don't want water to drip down on the main part of your pot. So that's a little bit tricky. And now, before you close it up too much, try and get the water out of the bottom, because if the water sits there, it will weaken the bottom, and it could eventually lead to edge cracks. So I don't want that. Adding this top to the textured bottom actually turned out to be a little more tricky than I thought. And I have no idea if this is going to turn out really interesting or very ugly. because it is weaker because of the texture. So it tends to fall in a little bit, and I'm trying to avoid that without making it too wobbly. You see here, it's falling in, and it's crackling up a little bit. It's very difficult. It is because it's weak here. Maybe I should have made it thicker. Maybe I just need to live with the fact that it's a little more bulby. You could call it wobbly. I think I will have to dry this a bit more before I, because you see it's bubbling out here. And it's just too weak. So I think I will have to firm it up a bit more here and live with whatever bulby, wobbly shape that I have this in now, and then try and see if I can somehow finish the top. Now I will only work on the top section and accept whatever I have below. I will be able to do some adjustments in the trimming, but I think it's still going to be sort of wobbly, bulby, but it's an experiment. And maybe if it's very wobbly, my daughter's going to love it. Think I'm gonna leave it here. It's sort of a strange shape. I will do a little bit of trimming around here, maybe do a little bit of post texturing there, but I think I'm gonna leave it for now. And the conclusion so far is it is possible. It is a little less difficult than adding sections and do texture, but it's not without challenges, because it does get weaker in the first section when you have textures. So maybe I need to do thicker walls and accept it's going to be a more heavy pot, or maybe I should dry it up a little more before I add the next section. In any case, it turned out less of a failure than the first experiment I did with this. So I hope you enjoyed following me on my journey to making taller textured pots. If you did, please subscribe, write a comment, share, and I hope to see you again next Sunday at 5 p.m. Central European Time, where I'm hopefully going to have another video for you. Have a great day.